My name is Megan Carter. I'm 30 years old, and my life completely crumbled at my dad's birthday party. Picture this. A family gathering, laughter buzzing through the room. Then suddenly my dad leaned across the table. His eyes fixed on me and asked, "Megan, the $200,000 I gave you. What did you do with it?" My chest tightened. $200,000. I froze, the fork sliding from my hand and clattering onto the plate. "What do you mean?" I stuttered. My sister's face turned pale, her fingers shaking as she tried to form words. The room sank into a suffocating silence. I had been entrusted with a fortune to chase my dream of starting a fashion shop, but someone in my family had different intentions. Betrayal from your own blood cuts the deepest. Have you ever felt it? Share your story in the comments. I'd been hustling in Chicago for years, working as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized fashion company. It was relentless, pitching campaigns, chasing deadlines, always yearning for something more. My dream had always been to open my own boutique, a place where I could create and sell original clothing lines. A few months earlier, my dad had made that vision feel within reach. He transferred me $800,000, no conditions, telling me it was my chance to build something of my own. I was overwhelmed. His trust in me meant everything. I'd been saving, scouting storefronts in Salt Lake City, where I grew up, planning to return and start over. That money was my ticket to a new life, and I had no intention of wasting it. Then, just a few days ago, my sister called out of the blue. Her voice was strained, almost rehearsed. "Dad's not feeling well," she said. "His birthday party's canceled. No reason to come home. It didn't sit right." Dad turning 60 was huge. He'd been talking about it for months, planning a big celebration at our family house in Sugar House. Why would he cancel without telling me himself? I pressed her, asking if he was really okay. She brushed me off, insisting, "It's just a cold. Don't worry." Her tone was rushed, like she couldn't wait to hang up. I ended the call, a knot tightening in my stomach. Something wasn't adding up. She was keeping something from me. We've never been close. She's always been about glitzy clothes and lavish trips, living a life I could never compete with. Growing up, she'd take my things without asking, always topping me with her stories of faraway vacations or expensive handbags. I learned to tune her out, but this call felt different. Why lie about Dad's party? I checked my texts, nothing from him, which was unusual. He's the type to call directly, always checking in, always asking about my job. If he were sick, he would have told me himself. I started to wonder if she was hiding something bigger than just a canceled celebration. I booked a flight to Salt Lake City anyway. I wasn't about to miss Dad's 60th, sick or not. I planned to surprise him with a gift, a sleek engraved watch I'd saved for, something to show how much he meant to me. Buying the ticket was an easy decision. Just a 3-hour trip from Chicago. As I packed, my mind kept circling back to my sister's call. Her words didn't fit with the dad I knew, the man who always encouraged me to chase my goals. I pulled up my bank account to double-check my savings, feeling a rush of gratitude for the $800,000 he'd given me. But as I scrolled through my transactions, one detail snagged my attention. A transfer notification I hadn't seen before, buried deep in my history. It was vague, just a reference code, no clear sender. My pulse quickened. Could this tie back to her call? I dialed my aunt, my go-to for family updates. She's sharp, never misses a beat, and never chases drama. "Canceled?" she repeated, doubtful. "I was at their house yesterday, and your dad was perfectly fine, planning the menu for his party." My grip on the phone tightened. Why would my sister lie about something so small? Aunt Ellen paused, then added, "You know, I spotted your sister with some new designer bags last week. She's been splurging a lot more than usual." That shook me. Designer purses, trips abroad, her lifestyle was extravagant, sure, but where was the money coming from? A quiet suspicion started to grow, one I couldn't shake. As I boarded the plane, my mind raced. I held onto the gift box with the watch, trying to focus on seeing Dad, but my sister's voice kept echoing in my head. Her lie about the party wasn't just a small fib. It felt like the edge of something much larger. I landed in Salt Lake City and drove straight to my dad's house in Sugar House, the watch box tucked safely in my bag. As I pulled up to the familiar modern home, my breath caught. Cars filled the street, warm lights spilled from every window. The party wasn't canceled at all. My sister had lied, and I was about to learn why. Stepping inside, I was hit with the buzz of chatter and clinking glasses. My dad stood near the dining table, laughing with guests, looking perfectly healthy. My mom hovered by the kitchen, arranging plates while my sister drifted around, her designer heels tapping against the hardwood floor. Aunt Ellen caught my eye across the room, giving a small wave. I forced a smile, though my pulse was racing. Why had my sister tried to keep me from this? I walked over to my dad, clutching the gift box. "Happy birthday," I said, handing him the watch. His face brightened, and he pulled me into a tight hug. "You didn't have to travel all this way," he said warmly. But as I stepped back, I noticed my sister staring at me, her eyes wide for a split second before she quickly turned. My mom glanced at her, then fussed with a napkin, avoiding my gaze. Their behavior was off, like they were covering something. I scanned the room, catching the way they kept trading nervous looks, their movements jittery. As the night went on, I stayed close to Aunt Ellen, who was sipping wine by the dessert table. She's always been the one I count on to cut through family nonsense. "I thought this was canceled," I whispered. She lifted a brow, setting her glass down. "Canceled? Your dad's been preparing this for weeks. Your sister's the one who told everyone you weren't coming." My stomach tightened. So it wasn't just a lie about the party. It was about me. I pressed, asking if she'd noticed anything unusual. Aunt Ellen leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Your sister's been on a spree lately. New handbags, jewelry, even boasting about a Paris trip last month. I spotted her at the mall dropping thousands like it was pocket change." My mind flashed back to our call, her hurried tone, her insistence I stay in Chicago. Paris. Thousands. She's always stretched beyond her means, but this was excessive. Where was the money coming from? I looked over at my sister, now laughing loudly with a guest, her diamond earrings glittering under the lights. My mom stood nearby, nodding along, but her smile looked forced, her fingers twisting at her bracelet. I remembered Aunt Ellen's warning from our earlier talk, my sister's reckless purchases, her sudden extravagance. A chill crept over me. Was this linked to that strange bank transfer I'd noticed? I wanted to confront her on the spot, but the party wasn't the place. I needed proof, not just suspicion. While I helped clear dishes, my sister brushed past me, her perfume sharp. "Didn't expect you here," she muttered, barely meeting my eyes. "Thought you'd be too busy in Chicago?" Her tone was clipped, almost defensive. I bit back a response, watching her stride away, her heels clicking quicker now. My mom avoided me completely, burying herself in the cake prep. The secrecy was thick, like a wall between us. Aunt Ellen pulled me aside again, her expression grave. "I don't know what's happening, but your sister's been acting shady for weeks. And your mom, she's involved." My heart thudded. The pieces still didn't line up, but the lies, the overspending, the nervous glances, it all pointed to something bigger. I clutched the edge of the table, forcing myself to stay calm. This night was about to reveal more than just a birthday. The party was in full swing, guests chatting, music humming in the background. I lingered near my dad, watching him unwrap gifts, his laughter easing some of my unease. Yet something still felt wrong. My sister and my mom kept their distance, their eyes darting whenever I got close. I tried to shove it aside. Dad deserved a perfect night. When the cake was brought out, everyone gathered around the dining room. Dad stood at the head, smiling, knife in hand, ready for the first slice. I lifted my glass for a toast when his face shifted, serious, almost piercing. "Megan," he said, his voice low but cutting through the chatter. "The $200,000 I sent you, what did you do with it?" My stomach dropped. $200,000. My mind went blank, my glass slipping, nearly spilling. "What do you mean?" I stammered, my voice barely audible. The room froze, all eyes locking on me. I looked at Dad, his steady gaze waiting. My throat tightened. I had no idea what he meant. The $800,000 for my boutique was one thing, but this? Another $200,000? When? How? Before I could answer, my sister, Kristen, I realized I hadn't even called her by name tonight, suddenly jumped in, her voice high and shaky. She probably just forgot, Dad, she said, forcing a laugh. You know how busy she is in Chicago? Her fingers twisted together, her face drained white, like she'd been caught under a spotlight. I stared at her, confusion curdling into suspicion. Why was she so quick to cover for me? Dad lifted a hand, silencing her mid-sentence. Kristen, I'm speaking to Megan. His tone was sharp, like a blade slicing through her voice. The guests shifted uneasily, their whispers dying out. My mom, standing close to Kristen, gripped her wine glass, her knuckles pale. Aunt Ellen, leaning by the wall, observed silently, her eyes narrowing as if she had anticipated this moment. The air thickened, heavy like a storm waiting to break. I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. Dad, I don't know about any 200,000, I said, my voice trembling. I received the 800,000 for my boutique, and I'm planning to use it. But that other money, I never saw it. My words lingered in the room, each one feeling like a step into something I couldn't unsee. Kristen's eyes widened, her mouth opening to argue again, but Dad's glare pinned her where she stood. Megan, he said low and deliberate, I sent you and your sister 200,000 each, apart from the boutique funds. It was for your own use, your future, your dreams. His eyes flicked to Kristen, then back to me. You're telling me you had no idea? My stomach sank. Separate money for Kristen and me. I shook my head, my hands shaking. No, Dad, I swear I never got it. I never even heard of it. My voice rose, mixed with disbelief and fury. How could I not know about $200,000? My gaze locked on Kristen, who was clutching the table now, her face pale as snow. She wouldn't meet my eyes, her lips pressed tight. Kristen tried again, her voice desperate. Dad, maybe there was some mistake at the bank or something, she rushed out. You know how these things happen. But her excuse rang hollow, and the way she dodged my gaze only deepened the knot inside me. My mom stepped closer, her hand gripping Kristen's arm as if to steady her. But she said nothing, her silence louder than words. Dad's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with something I'd never seen before. Betrayal, maybe, or rage. Enough, he snapped, his voice like steel. Megan, you're certain you didn't know? I nodded, my throat too tight for words. The room felt suffocating, every guest holding their breath, watching us come apart. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, breaking right in front of me. The dining room felt like it was caving in, the weight of my dad's question about the 200,000 still lingering. I stood frozen, eyes locked on Kristen, her face pale, her hands trembling. Dad's stare shifted between us, his expression hardening as silence grew unbearable. Guests shuffled awkwardly, their whispers faint beneath the tension. Dad stepped forward, his voice steady but edged with anger. Let me make this clear, he said, addressing everyone but staring directly at me and Kristen. I sent 200,000 to each of you, separate from the boutique money, Megan. It was for your futures, no strings attached. I trusted you both. His words slammed into me like a hammer. My head spun. Another 200,000? For me? I had never seen a trace of it. Never even heard of it until tonight. I opened my mouth to respond, but Dad turned to Kristen, his eyes narrowing. And you, Kristen? What did you do with yours? Her lips parted, but no words came. She glanced at Mom, who stood rigid, her hands clenched so tight her fingers were white. The room held its breath, waiting for Kristen's answer. Finally, she stammered. I used it for investments, Dad. You know, smart choices. Her voice cracked, her eyes darting to the floor. Dad's face darkened. Investments, he repeated, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Then why did Aunt Ellen tell me you've been wasting money on designer clothes and trips to Europe? My pulse quickened as I looked at Aunt Ellen, who gave a small nod, her expression grim. Kristen's shoulders sagged, and she shot a desperate look at Mom, who stepped forward, her voice trembling. Daniel, let's not do this here, she pleaded softly. We can talk in private. But Dad ignored her, his attention snapping back to me. Megan, you're saying you never got your share? I nodded, barely able to steady my voice. I swear, Dad, I didn't know. I thought the $800,000 was everything you gave me. His jaw clenched, and he turned on Kristen, his voice rising. Then where's Megan's money, Kristen? Because it sure as hell didn't reach her. Kristen's face crumpled, her hands twisting at her necklace. It was a mistake, she whispered, barely audible. I thought it was mine, Dad. I didn't mean to. Her words cut off as Dad slammed his hand against the table, glasses rattling. You thought? He roared. You took $200,000 that wasn't yours and blew it on what? Handbags, vacations? A surge of fury shot through me, my fists clenching. All those years of Kristen's lavish lifestyle, her smug attitude. She'd been spending my money. I turned to Mom, expecting her to defend me, but she just stood there, her eyes downcast, her silence deafening. Mom, I said, my voice breaking. Did you know? She flinched but didn't respond. Her lips pressed into a hard line. Her lips pressed into a hard line. Dad's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Linda, you knew about this too, didn't you? Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. Daniel, I didn't mean for it to go this far, she stammered. Kristen needed help, and I thought we could fix it before anyone noticed. Fix it. My blood boiled. They had stolen my future and brushed it off as a mistake. Dad pulled out his phone, his fingers steady despite the fury in his eyes. I'm calling the police, he said, his voice final. Kristen gasped, stumbling back. Dad, no, please, she begged, tears spilling down her face. Mom grabbed his arm, her voice frantic. Daniel, don't do this. We're family. He shook her off, his expression cold. Family doesn't betray family. You both knew exactly what you were doing. You're finished, he dialed, his voice calm as he spoke to the dispatcher. I need officers at my home in Sugar House. It's about theft. $200,000. The guests stood frozen, some edging toward the door, unwilling to witness the collapse. Dad turned to Kristen and Mom, his words like ice. You're out of my life, both of you, and you'll pay back every cent, starting now. I could barely breathe as the truth sank in. My family was splintering, and there was no going back. The police station was cold and stark, a harsh contrast to the warmth of Dad's house. I sat in the small waiting area, my hands clasped tight, still reeling from the night's chaos. Dad stood nearby, his face hard as stone, while Aunt Ellen flipped through a folder of documents she had brought. Kristen and Linda were in separate rooms, being questioned. The weight of it all pressed down on me. My family had shattered in mere hours. An officer approached, his badge glinting under fluorescent light. Ms. Carter, we've got statements from your sister and your mother, he said, calm but firm. You'll want to hear this. He led us into a small room with a one-way mirror where I saw Kristen slumped at a metal table, her eyes red and swollen. Linda sat in another room, her head bowed, hands twisting nervously. My stomach churned. I wasn't ready, but I needed the truth. The officer began with Kristen. She admitted to withdrawing funds from a joint account your father set up, he said, glancing at Dad. It held $200,000 each for you and your sister. She took your share a few weeks ago, thinking it was hers. My breath caught. A few weeks. That explained her recent splurge, the designer coats, the trip to Milan she flaunted online. She had been burning through my money like it was endless. Did she say why? I asked, my voice trembling with anger. The officer nodded. She claimed she needed it for personal expenses, luxury clothes, airfare, hotels. Most of it's gone. Maybe $10,000 remains in her accounts. $10,000. My heart sank. $200,000 meant for my future reduced to scraps. I glanced at Dad, his jaw clenched, eyes locked on Kristen through the glass. And my mom? I asked, dreading the answer. The officer flipped through his notes. Linda admitted she knew. She gave Kristen access, believing they could replace the money before it was noticed. Replace it. My fist clenched, fury boiling. They had gambled with my future, and now it was gone. Dad's hand gripped the chair, knuckles white. They had no right, he muttered, his voice raw. Aunt Ellen stepped forward, her folder open. I've got proof, she said, handing the officer a stack of receipts. Kristen's shopping, handbags, jewelry, first-class tickets. I even saw her at the mall a month ago spending like she'd won the lottery. The officer scanned the papers, nodding. This lines up with her statement, he confirmed. She used the funds for personal purchases, no attempt to hide it. I stared at the receipts, my anger clashing with disbelief. Chanel bags, a Rolex, a trip to Italy, all bought with my money. Kristen sat with her head buried in her hands, stripped of the arrogance she once flaunted. Linda in the other room looked broken, her shoulders slumped. They had plotted together, certain I'd never discover the truth. The officer turned to us, his expression firm. This is a serious crime. Second-degree felony theft in Utah. They could face up to 15 years and heavy fines plus restitution. He paused, glancing at me. With most of the money gone, recovery will be difficult. We can seize assets, cars, jewelry, but it won't cover everything. I nodded, my throat tight. Justice sounded empty when the money was already gone. Dad's voice cut through the silence. I want them prosecuted, he said, unwavering. They betrayed my daughter, and I won't let it slide. The officer nodded, jotting down notes. We'll proceed with charges. They'll remain here tonight and we'll need your statements. A mix of guilt and resolve filled me. Kristen and Linda had made their choices, and now they'd face the consequences. As we stepped out, Aunt Ellen placed a steady hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Megan, she said softly. I wasn't sure. The truth was out, but it didn't feel like victory. My family was gone, and so was my money. All I had left was the will to set things right. The weeks after the police station dragged on like years. I sat in Dad's study in Sugar House, surrounded by shelves I'd known my whole life. Yet the air felt heavy with finality. Dad had summoned me back to meet with his lawyer, a choice that would permanently reshape our family. My hands twisted nervously as I waited, the sting of Kristen and Linda's betrayal still raw in my chest. Susan Pierce, Dad's attorney, entered, her briefcase snapping open on the desk. Megan, Daniel has revised his estate, she said, her tone steady and professional. He'll explain. Dad sat across from me, his face etched with fatigue, but his gaze unwavering. I've rewritten my will, he said, locking eyes with me. The house, the investment funds, everything goes to you. Kristen and Linda get nothing. His words dropped like a stone into still water, rippling through me. The house alone was worth over $1 million, and the portfolio from his real estate ventures was a fortune. But inheriting it this way felt hollow. Are you certain, Dad? I whispered. He nodded, jaw tight. They stole your future, Megan. They don't deserve my trust. Susan handed me the new will, its pages crisp and unyielding. I skimmed it, my name the only beneficiary. The weight pressed down. Not just wealth, but the end of any hope for reconciliation. Susan adjusted her glasses, her voice matter of fact. Kristen and Linda have been convicted of second-degree felony theft for taking the $200,000 from the joint account. Both are on probation for 36 months. She paused, glancing at Dad. They've also been ordered to repay $200,000 to you. Megan, along with fines of $8,000 each. My stomach nodded. Restitution sounded just, but I remembered the police report. Only $10,000 had remained. How could they ever replace what was already burned away? Aunt Ellen, seated nearby, spoke, her tone calm but pointed. Kristen tried to fix it, she said, folding her arms. She sold her Mercedes, barely a year old, and some of her designer things, handbags, jewelry, even that Rolex from Milan. She scraped together about $40,000. $40,000. My heart sank. The numbers didn't add up. Even if she liquidated every possession, it barely touched the debt. And Linda? I asked, bracing for the answer. Aunt Ellen sighed. She's parting with what little she has. Some jewelry, a few collectibles. Maybe another 10 grand. I leaned back, my thoughts spiraling. $50,000 salvaged from their belongings, barely a fraction of what they owed. The court had seized what remained in Kristen's accounts, but it was a drop in the bucket. Susan cut in, her voice precise. The judge issued a repayment plan. They'll pay monthly based on income, but it could stretch for years. If they default, they face jail time, 1 to 3 years. Years. The word echoed in my mind. Kristen and Linda, once pillars of our family, now shackled to debt and disgrace. Dad's voice broke the silence, low and resolute. I don't care how long it takes, he said. They made their choice. His words carried the finality of a man who had lost faith in both his wife and his daughter. I studied him, seeing the grief beneath the fury. This was no longer about money. It was about trust, shattered beyond repair. Kristen and Linda had abandoned the Sugar House neighborhood, unable to bear the whispers of friends and neighbors. They moved into a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, a rundown complex far from the lives they once flaunted. Kristen, who had paraded her lavish tastes, now juggled odd jobs, retail, waitressing, just to meet probation terms. Linda, stripped of her social status, worked part-time clerical shifts, her savings bled dry by court fees. Their world had collapsed, reduced to scraping by under shame and obligation. I searched myself for feelings, rage, pity, even satisfaction, but all I found was emptiness. The money was gone, and so was the family I thought I knew. Aunt Ellen reached for my hand, her grip steady and warm. You're stronger than this, Megan, she whispered. You'll build something new. Her words were kind, but they couldn't fill the void. Dad rose, his shoulders squared. This is your home now, he said, gesturing around the study. Make it yours. As I stepped out, the weight of reality settled in. The fortune was mine, but the price was everything else. Time had a strange way of softening the sharpness of grief. Months after the collapse, I stood in downtown Salt Lake City, gazing at the sign above my new boutique, Carter's Charm. The storefront gleamed under the morning light, its sleek windows showcasing dresses and accessories I'd spent weeks handpicking. The $800,000 Dad had given me, his gift for my future, had transformed a lifelong dream into reality. Opening a fashion shop wasn't just a business venture. It was my way of taking back what had been broken. The past year had been a storm. After Dad revised his will, leaving me the house and his investment funds, I resigned from my job in Chicago and came back to Utah. The choice hadn't been simple. Chicago had been my escape, my shot at building a life far from family turmoil. But Salt Lake City was home, and Dad needed me as much as I needed him. Aunt Ellen, steady as always, helped me settle into the Sugar House property, now officially mine. Together, we made it a refuge filled with fresh memories free from the sting of betrayal. Launching the boutique consumed every ounce of effort I had. I poured the $800,000 into leasing a prime downtown spot, designing the interior, and sourcing rare pieces from local creators and international labels. The first months were nerve-wracking. Late nights balancing books, learning the mechanics of retail, and doubting whether I'd made the right gamble. But little by little, customers arrived. Fashion bloggers wrote about my store and word began to spread. By the 6th month, Carter's Charm was breaking even, and by the 9th, it was flourishing. A feature in a local magazine called it Salt Lake's new gem, and for the first time in years, I felt genuine pride. Living close to Dad and Aunt Ellen gave me something I hadn't expected, a family small, but genuine. Dad, now retired, spent his days in the garden or stopping by the shop to bring me coffee. His laughter, once scarce, filled our Sunday dinners, where Aunt Ellen would tell stories of her travels or mock Dad's questionable tie choices. We weren't flawless. The grief over Kristen and Linda still lingered, but we were honest with each other. That honesty, raw and unfiltered, became the glue holding us together. I seldom heard from Kristen or Linda anymore. The court had ordered them to repay the $200,000 they'd stolen from me, but their payments came in small, irregular amounts. Kristen had sold her car and luxury items, scraping together what she could, while Linda survived on a modest salary from her clerical job. They lived quietly on the outskirts of the city, their lives reduced to shadows of what they once had. I didn't wish them harm, but I couldn't bring myself to reach out. Their choices had carved a line we could never cross. One evening, as I locked up the boutique, I sat at the counter sketching ideas for a new clothing line. The gentle hum of the city outside felt soothing, a reminder that life moved forward. I thought about the money, the $800,000 that gave me this chance, and the $200,000 that had ripped us apart. It wasn't only about the dollars. It was about what they symbolized. Kristen and Linda's greed had cost them everything: family, trust, stability. Their actions proved what happens when ambition rots into selfishness. Looking back, I realized the lesson wasn't only about loss. It was about truth. Being honest with myself, with Dad, with Aunt Ellen had rebuilt what had been broken. Facing the pain, standing up to betrayal, it hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. That truth carried me through long days of building my shop, through the quiet moments of doubt, and into a life I could truly call mine. As I turned the key on the boutique's door, I glanced at Salt Lake City's skyline, its lights twinkling against the mountains. This was my home, my future, built on the foundation of what I'd learned. Greed destroys, but honesty lasts.